Hi everyone, this is Chelsea, and in today's tutorial video I am going to be showing you how to draw the wave pattern that we practice in our Occupational Specific Essential Skills class for sewing machine operation. Now, before we sew any of the patterns in class, what we do first is we practice drawing them. And the reason for that is because we want to familiarize ourselves with the pattern. We want to really understand all of the measurements involved in the pattern, and it's good to be able to develop our hand-eye coordination as well. Okay, so today's video is going to focus on these wavy lines, and you'll notice that they're actually quite similar to the straight line pattern that I showed you how to do in another video. And if you haven't taken a look at that one yet, I highly suggest that you take a look at that too. Now, they're similar in that it uses the same measurement in between all of the lines, which is going to be 1/4 inch. Of course, the only difference here is that we are curving the lines as we go. All right, so I'll show you how to do that. Let's get started. So for this task, you'll need a few supplies. Of course, you'll need a blank sheet of paper like this one. This one is just an 8.5 by 11 printer paper. You're also going to need a ruler that has inches on it. And I would also suggest that you use a pencil for this pattern because a pencil is easier to use. If you make a mistake, you can erase it. I'm going to be using a pen like this one just because it shows up a little easier on camera, but I would suggest that you use a pencil. Okay, so let's get started. So like I had mentioned before, this pattern is very similar to the straight lines in that we're going to be using the 1/4 inch measurement for all of our in-between spaces on our waves. So I'll just show you up close and give you a bit of a refresher on how to find a 1/4 inch. So remember, we're going to start at the beginning notch, which is 0, and then we're going to count 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so this notch right here is going to indicate a 1/4 inch for us. And so that means that all of our waves are going to be this distance apart. All right, so let's start off on the right side of our paper. For all of our patterns, we always start on the right side, and that's because when we sew our patterns, we would always start on the right side of the fabric and then move to the left. So we're going to do that here. Okay, so I'm going to be using my ruler for measurement, but I actually don't need to use my ruler quite yet because nothing needs to be measured for the first wave. So I'm actually just going to put my ruler to the side, and right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to freehand a wave shape. Starting in the very top right corner, I'm going to make a little notch, just like that, and that's going to be my back stitch. And then I'm going to make a wave shape that's going to look a little bit like a stretched out S. So I'm going to start in this top right corner, and I'm going to draw a curve going out this way. Then once I get about halfway down my paper, I'm going to start turning it back the other way and make another bump going this way until I reach the end. All right, so I'm going to start that right now. Starting at the very top. And then I'm curving it and curving it back out the other way to make an S shape. All right, now remember, of course, when we sew it, we would also have a back stitch at the end. And so I'm going to add that in there. So you'll notice that the beginning and the end of my S shape that I just made, they're not right up and down from each other, right? The top one is starting right in the corner here, whereas by the time I get to the end, it's pushed out a little bit this way. Now there's no exact measurement that you need to follow in this space here, you just want to make sure that you have a good bump going both ways. Okay, so I'll show you some examples of what you can try to go for versus what you would want to try to avoid. So this example over here, this is an example of a good wave shape. You have one bump going out this way. It curves about halfway down, and then you have another bump going out in the opposite direction. So you have two bumps all together. And you remembered your back stitches at the beginning and the end, and it's somewhat symmetrical. I actually made the bottom part of this wave a little bit bigger, and that's because as you add waves in, if you make this part a little bit too squished, like one of my examples over here, you'll find that they don't quite fit as easily. So that's why I did it a little bit more stretched out in this area. Now, some examples of what you might want to avoid. One example up here. This is the example that I was talking about where the bottom part is a little bit too squished. So as you can see, if I were to add in more waves, eventually I wouldn't be able to fit them in anymore. And so you want to try to avoid this type of shape. Another shape that I see really commonly is people will often make a pretty good bump at the top of their wave, and then when they try to make this part here, they'll kind of flatten it out and make it straight almost. So you really want to try to make sure that you avoid this and you make more of a curved shape at the bottom here. Now, one more mistake that I typically see is people drawing in an extra bump at the end. So oftentimes people will start off making a pretty good curve at the top, then they'll curve it to the bottom, and rather than stopping here, they'll give it a little tail and they'll start curving it back off to the right again. So it almost looks like a backwards 3. You want to try to avoid this as well. All right, so as you're drawing your first wave shape, really take a look at it and make sure that it looks more like this one. If you see any of these mistakes here, you might want to just try again. You can erase, you can turn your paper so that you start on the other side, or maybe flip your paper over and try again on that side. Whatever you need to do to try to achieve this shape here. Okay, so let's get back to the demonstration then. So now that you have your first wave shape, now is the time that you're going to start measuring. So with my ruler, like I showed you before, I'm going to find the 1/4 inch measurement, and I'm going to measure at the top and the bottom of my wave. Okay, so I'm going to start off by putting my ruler down so that the 1/4 inch notch is right up against where I started that first wave. So it should pretty much be right where the back stitch is. And I'm going to make myself a little mark at the top here, just so that I remember where I'm going to start off when I make my next wave. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom here. And again, just finding 1/4 inch, lining up the 1/4 inch mark with the end of the back stitch. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's a little dark, but I'll pull it away and I'll show you in one moment. And I'm just going to measure from the back stitch that I made here, 1/4 inch to the side. Okay, so just like that, you can see this small dot that I made here. That's going to be my end point where I'm aiming for. All right, so now that I've made my marks at the beginning and the end of where my wave is going to be, I'm going to start to slowly follow the same shape that I made originally. And you really want to make sure that you're trying to keep your line parallel with the first wave the whole way down. Your goal is to try to make sure that you have 1/4 inch of a space in between the whole way down. So I'm going to start at the beginning, Again, I'm going to make this first notch my back stitch, and it should be right at the top of your page. You don't want any gaps. And then very slowly, I'm going to start to make my wave going down. I'm going slow because I don't want to go off track. I really want to make sure that I'm following closely to that first wave that I made. And I'm just making really light sketch drawings here. So I'm trying to keep the same distance apart the whole way down. Oops, need to go on a little bit more of a curve here. There we go, until you get near the bottom. Just like that. And then you're going to draw in your back stitch again. Now if you need to, like me, I think I need to go back and clean up this line a little bit. So now that I've put in my sketch marks, I'm just going to go back and make sure it looks a little nicer. Fill in any sections where I missed the first time. And there we go. And then that's my next wave. Perfect. So then you just keep repeating that process over and over. Again, I would measure 1/4 inch. Now from this last back stitch that I made here, 1/4 inch to the side, to the left, at the top, and again at the bottom, 1/4 inch away from the end of the last wave that I made every time. And then following along again. So I'll do one more just as an example. Drawing my back stitch at the top. And away we go. And really trying to use good hand-eye coordination to try to keep my wave exactly 1/4 inch away from the last wave the whole time. There we go. Now I'm going to go back and just darken up my line a little bit. And remember, if you're working with pencil and you make a mistake, you can always erase it. The really important thing is that you're able to catch your mistakes and you're able to see where it went wrong, because that's a really good skill to have, especially as a sewing machine operator, being able to check your work for quality. That's very important. All right, and then I'm just going to add my last back stitch in there. And there we go. So then I would just keep doing that, and you can keep going all the way across the page until you start to add more and more waves in. So here I've done where I have several waves, and then I would just continue this pattern all the way across until I fill the page. All right, so I hope that is helpful for you. And of course, I recommend to check out all of the other drawn pattern practice videos that I've uploaded onto this channel. There are several other ones that can help you to prepare for sewing these patterns when you do your training on the sewing machines. All right, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.